3.7. So let's chant the Sanskrit and translation in unison. Yastvandriyani manasa niyam yarbhatirjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asakta savishishyate. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. Text 8. Niyatam kuru karmatam karma jayo hyakarmanah sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhyet akarmanah. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. Text 9. Yagyarthat karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya tasanga samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. Text 10. Sahagya praja shishtva purotvacha prajapatihi anena prasavishyadhyavam eshavostvishta kamaduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you all desirable things." Text 11. Parasparam bhavayanta shriyaparam alapsyata. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. Thus nourishing one another, there will reign general prosperity for all. Text 12. Ishtan bhagan hivo deva dasyante yagya bhavitaha tardatan apradayaibhyo bhyo stena eva saha. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Text 13. Yagya shishtan shina santo muchyante sarvakil vishaihe munjate te tvagham papa ye pachantyatmakaranat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment barely eat only sin. Text 14. Anad bhavanti bhutani parjanyarana sambhavaha yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagyakarma samudbhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Text 15. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma pratishthitam. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Text 16. Evam pravartitam chakram yatihayaha aghayor indriyaramo sajivati. My dear Arjuna, a man who does not follow this prescribed Vedic system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin. A person delighting only in the senses lives in vain. Text 17, last text. Yastvatma ratir eva syad atma triptash chamanavah atmanyeva sat santushtas tasya karyam navidyate. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. All right. So now we'll go back to text 7. Chapter 3, text 7. Translation. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. So let me read text 6 and 7 in one after another. Text 6. One who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Text 7. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The Svartagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life, as prescribed in the Shastras, and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. Such a sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than a charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. So this is kind of touching on something that has kind of been a theme past few days. Some topics came up. So the idea is that Krishna consciousness is not a mechanical process. So we know our experience of this material world leads an intelligent person to understand that wanton engagement of the senses in their objects is a source of misery, right? And Krishna himself confirms this in the end of the second chapter, where he says that yehi samsparshaja boga dukha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nate shuramate buddha. So that, I think Krishnendu mentioned that yesterday. So adyantavanta, so the beginning and an end, the pleasures which come from the samsparshaja boga, when the senses contact material enjoyment, the pleasure which is derived is actually called the womb of suffering, or rather, that is the womb of suffering. Samsparshaja boga. When the senses contact material enjoyment, Krishna says that's the womb of suffering. So a wise person doesn't delight in those pleasures which seemingly come from that type of engagement because they have a beginning and an end. So somebody who's really intelligent says, why would I just want to be happy a little bit? You can ask somebody, are you happy all the time or a little bit of the time? Obviously, you want to be happy all the time. And if somebody tells you no, saying, why not? And actually, you can't not want to be happy all the time because that's actually who we are. We're Anandamaya Vyasat. Or rather, that's a Vedic phrase which is attributed to God, the Supreme Person, to Krishna. And we, being his part and parcels, we share in that quality. We always want to be happy. And you can watch it in yourself that you're always searching for pleasure every single moment. We're fiends for pleasure. We always want to enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with it. What's wrong with it is that we've been convinced to try to enjoy a pleasure which is substandard. Right? So I was hearing just briefly a lecture from Prabhupada the other day, and Prabhupada is saying this movement is simply enjoyment, simply recreation. You know, everybody likes to dance, sing. Of course, you know, we are a little shy in different ways, you know. So sometimes we don't, but inside, all we want to do is dance and sing every moment, all the time, you know. What is it? Unreservedly, to be uh, unreservedly authentic, you know. That's what we want to be completely uh, genuine and expressive of our deepest, you know, being, you know, who we are. And intrinsically, everybody is a type of uh, you know, a dancer or a singer, you know, a poet, and you know, that's an actually those qualities are intrinsic to the soul, and we can understand that in the spiritual world. We hear from our authorities that there in the spiritual world, every word is a song and every step is a dance. So that's why one time Maharaj, His Holiness Dhanira Goswami, was mentioning that that's why we like these musicals so much, you know. And actually, it used to be really popular, musicals. There's a TV channel that my mom used to watch, and there's always all the movies were musicals. That was it. They were all musicals. That's what they used to watch. It's like that was it. It wasn't all any of this other, you know. So there would be the plot, and inside the plot, there'd be like so many different musical, you know, and it keeps it exciting. So Mars was mentioning one time that that's why we like that type of thing, because in the spiritual world, it's like that. You know, we are singing and dancing, but what is the subject? Right? The subject is Krishna. Right? Krishna is the center of it. We're talking about how he did this and he looks like this and he sings like this and he smells like this, and we're going to do this for him and we want to do that for him and all those wonderful spiritual things. So you want to search for pleasure at every moment because that's who we are. And we have been convinced to get some low grade type of pleasure, very like substandard, low class type of pleasure, you know? And that pleasure, which is actually available, is described especially in the fifth canto of Bhagavatam, fifth canto, fifth chapter. There's a section which we have in our book called Spiritual Yoga. It's like a powerhouse book that people, they don't know what is in there. Excuse me, sir, your life is over. What? Because what it says is, don't try to spend your life enjoying like the animals. You have a pleasure which is far superior that you have access to in the human form of life, and you should do it. You should give it all your energy and enthusiasm. Of course, this whole statement is coming from Rishabhadev. So Rishabhadev is on a whole nother level, a personality on a whole nother level. So he's teaching his sons about this. He says you should perform tapo divyam, divine austerities. So we can actually go forward looking at these things. And this is the thing. By performing this divine austerities, spiritual yoga, then we can reach the Svarta Gati, or the goal of self-interest. So this is the idea. Everybody's trying to be happy through different levels of intelligence, right? So according to their intelligence and their faith, and they endeavor for happiness based on that platform of knowledge. So if one really knows himself to be something other than this body, and he knows himself to be not just Brahman, but actually an eternal servant of the servants of the servants of the servants of the servants, 100 times removed of Krishna, then he knows his real identity. And then he knows my real self-interest is to reconnect myself in loving devotion with Krishna, with Vishnu, and enter back into that atmosphere of service, enter back into that attitude of service, which is actually my birthright. That's actually my real nature, is this, unflinching devotion for Krishna, and an unwavering desire to serve him at every moment. So the idea here is that we can reach that goal through the Vedic system. So the Vedic system, or if is can be known as Varnashram Dharma, but above that is the Bhagavata Dharma. Bhagavata means that which is in relation to Bhagavan or Krishna, or rather I should say Bhagavan. So the Bhagavatam is, or this Bhagavata Dharma is real religion, or the real occupation of every soul, which is to reconnect himself in love and devotion with Krishna. So Varnashram Dharma is meant to awaken that Bhagavad Dharma. And so if we start with Bhagavad Dharma, then we automatically achieve all the goals of all the Vedic knowledge. So therefore, we don't preach anything less than pure devotional service. That's practically our system. Now, there is a lot of practical things that are encompassed or that are included in devotional service. So it's like I may tell somebody, hey, please take your shoes off there at the door. It's kind of a part of our etiquette. It's super cool. You'll like it. It feels fun on the floor. So one may say, well, you didn't tell him to surrender to Krishna, but I did. But I did. So the how do we know is because it was included in the instructions of the acharyas. So Prabhupada was particular about that point, that he wanted the temple to be placed, the temple room, no shoes, you know. So he has comments about that, and it's a general etiquette also. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is that we start at the top, but we also uh, we also speak to time, place, and circumstance. You know, that's also a part of it. But uh, one who is not very, what do you want to say? One who always wants to be the humble servant or make sure that he doesn't get lost in anything, uh, below the standard of pure devotional service, then it may be very wise just to speak exactly the, you know, like in one sense, the most uh, direct, the most direct ways. So, especially for those of us that are trying to become very much more strong, bolstered in our devotional service, we can tell people, as it is. We always tell people as it is, but we don't have to be shy about cut cutting to the chase, not wasting any time. Because actually, we don't have time to waste. And if we help one person become a pure devotee of Krishna, then it's very much valuable. And if by preaching in a very strong way, we also become more strong or stronger, then we should do it. There's no problem. Better be safe than sorry. That was kind of a side point. But the point I wanted to make is that this Varnashram system, the Vedic system, there's knowledge in the scriptures, and through that system, we can attain uh, this end goal, which is to return back to Godhead and enter into that world of pure spiritual enjoyment forever. So, one other point that's mentioned here. No, I'm burning up through the time here with this long-winded section, but Prabhupada makes a point which I think is really cool. He says, a householder can also reach the destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. So this is the idea, is that being a married person is not outlawed. And for some, it's more effective towards the goal. The idea is that we ourselves have different attachments, and it's kind of just where we're at. And just like we heard this morning, one cannot just jump to the higher standards of consciousness. Rather, like if we're affected more by mode of passion and ignorance, it's not something I just decide to do, you know. But what I can decide to do is I can desire to follow and associate with the pure devotees who are situated even above the mode of goodness. And by that association, I can improve gradually. So the idea is wherever you are, whoever you are, start hearing, start associating with the great souls right now. Don't wait. Take this book, hear from Srila Prabhupada right now. And it works. That transcendental sound vibration is so powerful. Doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, it's going to work on your heart and purify you. Right? So then the idea is that, one is not barred to take a mechanical process to make spiritual advancement. Right? the principle is to please the pure devotee of Krishna, right? So if the pure devotee of Krishna in Parampara system, the current link says, go on the street and chant Hare Krishna. Go on the street and distribute these books, rather. Offer your food to the deity in the temple in a regulated manner. Rather, offer nice foods to the deity in the temple in a regulated manner and take part of those remnants. Right? Different instructions are there from the pure devotee, from Srila Prabhupada, and they're all based on the Shastras. If we take those, right, then Krishna will be inclined to give us all mercy. But if I try to control the senses artificially with a dirty heart, there's no question of real meditation. It's just artificial. So the key here, which Krishna actually, he says himself, he says, karma indriyai, active by the active sense organs, right? So in the translation, Prabhupada says, on the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. So therefore you have, this movement. The whole day is active engagement of the senses in the Lord's service. And it's practical, it's tangible, it's meaningful, right? It's you should do something. Because what? Because people are out there and they're suffering and they're gonna have terrible reactions to their activities, and ignorance is no excuse for them. You know what I mean? It is ignorance of the laws doesn't prevent one from being, punishable. Now, to a certain degree, there is some leniency for ignorance, right? The judge doesn't just give everybody the same blanket sentence, but at the same time, it's still breaking the law. And in the human form of life, the law is clear, and the law is stated here in this third chapter. We have to perform sacrifice for Krishna. That's the law. And if we don't, does anybody remember? What are we called? Thieves. Right? If we don't offer back, to Krishna, all the things that we're being provided by him, we're just stealing them. So actually, we're a society of thieves because we're a godless society. And we're all taking those goods and services that the Lord is providing out of his kindness to all of us. And we're not giving any credit back. So let's read text 8. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. Purport. There are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage, and professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. He performed his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and sold together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously, without purification of materialistic propensities, right? Work should not be given up capriciously without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature, or in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so, through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. So we don't want to become like a so called holy man, you know, holy roller or, holy beggar. That we are still dirty at heart and in the guise of a saint or a renunciate, somebody who's given up the materialistic pleasures. Actually, we're just interested in maintaining the body. You know, Prabhupada would call it like a chapati problem. Chapati is that type of tortilla looking food item, you know. So everybody's got these chapati problems. And somebody's trying to solve their chapati problem in the guise of a spiritual person, and it's worse than just being a regular karmi, you know, because actually he is a karmi, but he's making a show out of the spiritual system. So the idea is that we have to purify the materialistic propensity. That's tough. That takes work and dedication, good association. Really, utsahan nishchar daryat, tat tat karma pravartanat. Somebody else? So there's this nice verse from Nectar of Instruction, which is number, I'm not sure which number it is, but it talks about the six items favorable for the development of pure unalloyed devotional service. You want devotional service? Pure devotional service? Rupa Goswami says 6 items. Enthusiasm in devotional service, right? Patience in devotional service, right? So there's enthusiasm, patience. There's also, what was the third one? Confidence, rather. Then there's also, what is it? Accepting prashadam. That's also favorable for devotional service because that's one of the following in the footsteps, or rather following the instructions of devotional service. Tat tat karma pravartana. Then there's one is renouncing dissociation of materialistic persons. And then the other one is following the footsteps of the great personalities. So all these are part of it. And we can achieve pure devotional service by this means. And yeah, we have to continue on. It takes some work, but it's definitely possible. And that's why we have these societies. Please.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear? Oh, Hare Krishna. So, Maharaj wanted to make a comment about this point about the show bottle spiritualist, show bottle transcendentalist, where I'm trying to summarize what he said, so bear with me. But some people want to take to the path of meditation and be silent, or voidism, just make all of our activities nil. cut out all the things that bring us problems and just meditate. But people may take the meditation for 20 years, and I believe he said Prabhupada brought up the point, what did your meditation get you? You were quiet. Okay, you were quiet. Is that really something very desirable to achieve? So it's better to act in service for Krishna, do something active, because an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So especially as we're conditioned and we want to sit and be a quote unquote show bottle spiritualist, due to our contamination of the modes of material nature, the idle mind is often more detrimental than it is beneficial. So better to engage ourselves in active service. Is there anything else? There was a little more, but that's the gist. That's what I remember. So Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, and thank you, Krishna and Prabhu. And we're so fortunate because we have a whole spread, we have a whole day kind of active service. And it's really nice. And it's not limited, I promise you. It's not limited. And barely have I even started to try to be engaged under the direction of, the Parampara system. And different adventures have, happened, which I never would have thought, different, wonderful, different services that are very compelling engagements for the mind and the senses and the body, so there's no dearth, or there's no lack of good engagements. The only lack is um, you know our willingness to receive instructions from the parampara, you know and so we had one monk who uh, would always remind us that we can go to our uh, teammates in devotional service. We can go to our um, you know those who have been asked to kind of collaborate in our service, and ask them, how can I serve you? How can I serve? What can I do? And this is the attitude that is lacking in us. And we pray to Srila Prabhupada that we can develop such an attitude, because this is what he wants. He told us that this is the pleasing attitude of the spiritual world, to collaborate in the Lord's service. So there's no lack of engagement, good engagement, but sometimes these bodies don't cooperate exactly. That's one thing. And the mind is always a rascal, so never trust him. But um, you know, I think just yesterday, yeah, we were hearing one devotee was speaking about how when we engage in the Lord's service, then he can bless us with unlimited energy. Like I think, Krishna this morning was talking about how though Sri, Advaita Acharya is an old man, he was the lead dancer for a whole party. And those kirtan parties, that was a fired up affair. I was full enthusiasm, you know. That was heavy duty kirtan, you know. And they were really they were leaping, they were dancing, they were twirling and stepping and singing. And so anyway, and actually I've seen it. We've seen it, that the Lord has given wonderful energy and vitality to his pure servants. And specifically, we can recognize it in the person of Srila Prabhupada. We hear about him in the morning time, about how at his senior age, after getting gored by a cow in the streets trying to, propagate his magazine back to Godhead, and uh, having a few heart attacks on the boat to America, you know, still he's praying to the Lord for to be an instrument, and he traveled around the world like 12 times or more since he after he came to the US. You saw it a few times, right? The video, Rishi. I think it's that video, the time lapse video where Prabhupada is going around the whole planet. Did it have a number on it? Something like that. Right. Yeah, Rishi was mentioning that Prabhupada said to the interviewer that he's going twice, thrice around the world, and that the reporter can't hope to work as much as he can. So he's our example. Uh, he's our guide. He's our teacher. He's our coach, our commander, and we always think ourselves indebted to him for doing, uh, you know, what he has done for us and continues to do for us. And actually, these books, uh, they're our medicine, they're our solace, they're our shelter, and we pray to be able to share them with more and more people. And that's why this book distribution and Harinam is so valuable. Like, this is the best way to meditate on Krishna, is to work tirelessly for propagation of this knowledge, to bring more and more people to this movement, to take advantage of this. And practically speaking, as much as we are taking advantage, we can encourage someone else to take advantage. Therefore, purity is a force. So, thank you very much, gentlemen. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the summer devotees.